So we have our dear friend Mitali Paul, and she's come on our show so many times, and her introduction is very impressive. So please go ahead and say what you do.
So thank you. It's always fun to be here and be able to talk about different things. My full-time job, of course, is with Houston Methodist. I'm administrator for the Department of Surgery, but I also serve as adjunct faculty at Texas Women's University and teach the Physicians Leadership Certificate Program at University of Houston Clear Lake.
How do you do all that? That's amazing.
So anyways, that's kind of what I do, and of course I serve on boards and volunteer a lot. I'm very passionate about healthcare and healthcare leadership, and so it's always fun to be here and talk about different topics and be able to share some thoughts. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah, of course. And today it's a different topic, right? So we're talking about personal branding, and it's very new for me too, because I've not even really read about it or anything. So how do you define personal brand?
Sure. So I'll start with a couple of quotes.
Yes.
Henry Ford said, "You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do." Jeff Bezos says, and this one I really like, "Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room."
Interesting.
So it's like a very simplified version, but really it is, what do you represent?
Yeah.
What do you stand for? And it could be anything and everything. It could be the values, that you stand for. It's your work experience. It's your life experience. What is your reputation? What do people think about you?
Yeah.
And what do you kind of stand for? I mean, all of that wrapped together. And now, of course, there's this entire social media aspect of it, which also, is part of your personal brand. So it's really, how do people see you? How do you show up? It could be your skills, your expertise, your achievements. How do you present yourself to others, whether it's online or offline? All of that is your personal brand. And so it really, at the end of the day, it represents what you are. So if you were to think about yourself as a company, Me Incorporated, right?
Yes.
What is that? What does that stand for? Right?
Yeah.
What is your brand? So if you were an entrepreneur or if you owned a company, the company stands for
something,
right?
yes.
So the same way when you talk about personal brand, it's really, what do you stand for?
Right.
What is your mission?
Right.
What are the values that you stand by?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I went through this exercise with a mentor, actually, who was a coach. And he asked me to do this exercise many years ago in my career. And I found it very, very refreshing and interesting, because when someone asks you, what do you stand for?
Yes.
It's such a loaded question. Right? And a lot of times we don't necessarily think about it.
At all.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this really makes you think about it. And you're almost putting a stamp of, what does Mitali stand for? Right?
Yeah.
Or what is it that people say about you when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what personal brand stands for.
And this is off the thing, but so why a personal brand, right? I'm thinking personal brand is more, of course, related to branding yourself if you're trying to how they have stuff on TikTok, Instagram, but they're always trying to sell you something
influence.
Yes. So if not that, then why?
Okay, great question. I think most importantly, it's for it really helps with your career.
Okay.
It really helps with, and then certain types of careers, it's very important.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a leadership position,
yes.
People that you are impacting or influencing need to know what you stand for, what you represent.
Right.
And a lot of times people come to work, you do that yourself too. A lot of times, I mean, even me in my life, every time I look at an opportunity, it's not just about the position. It's about who do I get to work with? Who's going to be my boss? Who's going to be my supervisor? What company am I working with?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then do my personal values align
True.
with the organization? Am I, my style, my expectations, my needs, do they match the person that I'm going to be reporting to? And those things become important.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't done your own soul searching and
Yes,
figuring out what your brand is, what's important for you, what are some of the derailers, then you wouldn't know. Right? And then that's when sometimes you'll find yourself doing something or picking a job and realizing that's not a good fit.
Yes.
People talk about fit. How do you define
all the time.
fit?
Yes.
How do you define fit?
That's true.
That's because you have your own personal brand and you know that this is what I stand for. It's almost like, and that's professionally, right?
Yeah.
For your career development, you know that this is what I want to be known for.
Yeah.
I want to be a subject matter expert on this.
Yeah.
When I think about my own self, you ask me about any other industry, I'll have no clue. But you ask me about healthcare, that's kind of the industry that I live and breathe.
Yes.
And I'm not an expert, but that's my life's goal, is to continue to advance and learn and, and then leadership topics or management topics, those are things that I'm passionate about. And so, even if I were to be considered kind of a subject matter expert in a particular area, that's part of my brand. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's on, the professional side. On the personal side, I feel even if you are an individual entrepreneur, right? You're maybe not working for a company, but you're consulting. You're out there. You're a business owner. People need to know what you stand for and what you represent.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're a small business owner, right? Or if you are a contractor and work as a consultant, people wanting to do business with you or working with you want to know what you stand for.
Yeah.
Because then the company is you and you're the company.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no difference between you if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so again, yes, it gets into that professional realm, but there really isn't much of a difference between you
and the
company
and what you
do.
For. Yeah, right.
The work.
Yeah.
And especially when you're starting off, you have to be very, very careful about your reputation, right? Because if you get a bad reputation, then you're not going to be successful. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at the very personal level, I think it just, at least defining your life's purpose, right? And then knowing what values you represent.
Absolutely.
Almost that's like a moral compass. Right?
And I love that because you don't think about it, but this actually, I feel like it makes you look inwards, right? And you're always going on about life like, with your head cut off, right? So this actually defines and gives you a goal and purpose. If you recognize what your purpose is, then you're going to walk towards it, right? So I just,
and I think,
true.
To be able to share that even with your children, right?
Yes.
This is what mom stands for. This is what my brand is. And then you're setting an example and giving them values and things to stand by. So I feel, when you think about personal branding, it's at so many different levels.
Yes,
right? It's important, obviously, professionally, because you want to be known and you want to be careful about what your reputation is. But even on the personal level, or if you're an entrepreneur or, working by yourself, I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, that's amazing. How can you identify and articulate your unique value proposition?
So that... that kind of takes you into that self-discovery phase, right? And being able to evaluate and look back at your professional and personal life. And again, depending upon what is your audience and who are you trying to, put the value proposition together for.
Okay.
Obviously, if it's a job interview, right, that you're preparing for, then your value proposition is going to depend upon what are they looking for in that position or that opportunity, and what do you have to offer? How are you going to add value? How are you going to differentiate yourself from others, right? And that's where it comes down to that unique value proposition.
Okay.
So you've got to look back and say, what have I done that I have, kind of consistently delivered in every role that I've been in or everything that I've done?
Okay.
And, as you advance in your career, you realize that there are certain things that you're naturally good at and you just end up doing everywhere you go. Even whether or not it's a part of your job or not, you end up doing that.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, when I think about, things that I've consistently delivered, I'm really good with people, okay? Motivating people, energizing them. And right from my very first management role, every role that I've held, I have, had like the highest physician satisfaction scores, the highest employee satisfaction scores, the best patient engagement scores. And these are all measures and metrics that you can see, and to be able to see what are the things how were things before you got there and when you left, where was it? And that itself will help you define your value proposition. Because a lot of times, like you said, you're just busy, you're doing things, you're not really sitting down to think about and say, what is it that, I'm good at? Or what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And there are some common themes that stand out, that come out, The other thing is, again, for me, to use examples, for me, it's financial, viability. Every place I've gone, I've always either increased revenue or cut down costs or found, additional streams of revenue. Another thing is, again, it just happens to be that every role that I've been in, I've been able to grow or expand like capital projects. So whether it was, expanding a clinic or opening up a new hospital or just, increasing, capacity or what have you. Again, different organizations, different roles, but I've always ended up being in some kind of capital construction project, right?
Okay.
And so now, at this stage in my career, I realize that's almost like a given.
Yeah.
And I'm actually taking a certificate, a healthcare design certificate right now with, which is kind of like a 6-month with a design company with an architectural firm. And they're offering it to healthcare executives. And,
that's amazing.
And I was like, I've always been involved in this. It's always been fun. But now to actually learn about how is the financing determined? How is the project managed? What are some of the milestones that you have to look for? And hearing these architects and designs and data analysts and, interior designers come and talk through different concepts where I was like, oh, this is what that means. And then even the entire financing, like when you have multi-million-dollar projects that are coming up, how do you finance it? How do you manage the finances? They keep the construction on track and things like that. So so for me now it's like, oh, I'm going to actually now add that credential to my portfolio.
Something you've been doing, but now it will be like a professional,
So I think, going back to, again, your question, how do you define your value proposition? You got to look back at what are some things that you've consistently delivered? What are some things that you're really good at? And sometimes you may also want to reach out to other people, right?
Okay.
Reach out to your mentors, reach out to your bosses, reach out to your coworkers and say, what do you see as my strength? What do you see as something that I have consistently been good at or delivered, right? Because a lot of times it helps you in looking at it from somebody else's perspective. And then you've got to put that together and be able to quantify it and be able to eloquently express it to someone else so that they understand. And it shouldn't be too technical where people don't really understand, right? Because it has to be something that people can relate to and understand and even measure and be able to say, wow,
Yeah.
she's really good. Or,
Yeah.
wow, he's really good.
Yeah, right.
Rather than just a bunch of flowery words.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's really how you differentiate yourself.
So, okay, great. What strategies do you recommend for building an online presence?
Oh, that is a heavy loaded question, right? So we are living in a fishbowl, and there's lots of pros to all of the online social media aspects in terms of if you really want to build your reputation, if you really want to reach out to people across geographic lines and across boundaries, you have a great opportunity because of social media. Thanks to social media, so many small businesses are taking off because you no longer need to have your own website and you market it and things like that for a small fee. You can do digital ads. You can reach out to so many people.
Yeah.
On the flip side of it, right, there's almost a barrage of information out there that you may or may not be able to control. Right?
True.
Because if you had your own website, you can manage the content. What gets posted and what's on there, you control it.
Yeah.
But when it's social media, anyone can post anything about you and tag you in it, right? And you may not necessarily agree with their viewpoint, but just because someone's tagged you, you get associated with that line of thinking. There are, and of course there are ways in which you can actually even make sure that nobody tags you unless you approve it and things like that. But it is a lot of work. You have to be very, very intentional and put in a lot of work. And so I think most importantly, the other thing that I always tell people is that, you have to understand that things don't disappear. Once something's posted,
it's there.
It stays for eternity.
Yeah, that's true.
And we see this so much, right, with politicians, with celebrities, where their careers are getting derailed because of something that they posted or something that they did that now has become public and gone viral. Maybe it was 10 years ago. Even in the most cryptic websites that you think nobody's ever going to find it, people find it and it gets released, and guess what? Your career is gone. Right? And so that's why I say we're living in a fishbowl, and it's very, very important that you're very intentional about your online presence as well as your offline presence, especially your online presence, right? Because so many other people are influencing it and impacting it. So you have to be proactive. You have to decide what is the message that I want people to see or receive about me, whether it is when I walk into a room or whether someone gets onto my social media sites and, Googles me and finds whatever information. You have to know how to control that content and have it consistent across, right? Because you can't say I'm just going to, say examples which may be controversial, but you can't say I support abortion rights in one place and then say I don't in another place, because then it's just contradictory. Do you or don't you? Right? I was like, I'm all for guns, or I'm not for guns, or what have you. I mean, it could be big controversial things, or it could be simple things.
Some small things,
where, and it's funny because people don't realize, but people have lost jobs or gotten into trouble because they've lied at work and called in sick, and then they're posting a vacation on social media. And then guess what? You're connected to your boss's friend or somebody else, and the person looks and is like, wait a minute, Mitali called in sick, but I see that she's out brunching with her girlfriends, Or, recruiters are all over social media, right? They're not just looking at your LinkedIn page. They're looking you up on Facebook. They're looking you up on different avenues, because when we're hiring for that cultural fit. What is your brand, right? And especially if you are in management or leadership positions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're in an you're in a position to influence other people.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't want, so I always tell people, like, do you want your kids or your mom to read this about
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Use that as a gauge.
Yeah, yes.
If you don't want your mom or your kids to read this, then don't post it.
Yes, true.
It's as
yeah,
simple as
that's
that.
yeah, easy, right?
It's
yeah,
as simple as that, because
yeah.
people are going to find it, and especially now things get viral like crazy,
yeah.
and you can't do
Control
away
it,
with
yeah.
it. You cannot control it.
Yeah.
You can do some, damage control, but
Some.
what's out there is
It's
out there.
there, like you said, for eternity.
So it may be very cool to, post all those crazy college parties and things like that on your social media. But when you're out there interviewing for jobs, guess what? Those are the pictures that the recruiters are looking at. And our youngsters don't really realize that, because these are things that are going to, and we see that, right? I mean, you see, again, with politicians and celebrities, you see things that they did 20 years ago coming back now, because now they're being vetted to be a candidate for this or that.
Yeah.
And every little thing that
Is
they
getting-
said or did
Yeah.
gets scrutinized.
every little
And that's why when you have, like, our company CEOs or our senior executives, they all have social media teams that support them, that
Yeah.
are constantly looking at the messaging.
Yeah.
They're writing their posts for them. They're
Yeah.
actually looking at what's out there.
Yeah.
So there's this whole, almost like a full-time job
Yeah,
of managing
yeah.
your online presence.
Presence,
Now,
yeah.
it may not be as important for, normal, regular people, like
yeah.
you and I, but even then it's important,
yeah.
because you want to know what's out there about you,
Yeah.
and what are people saying,
Yeah.
and do you want that
Yeah.
about you there?
Right.
And there are ways, there's, something called reputation management, and there are consultants that actually help you manage your reputation once there's damaging thing out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Okay.
But, it's really a full-time
Time
job,
job now.
and
Oh, wow.
I think it's important for people to understand and realize it, and be more proactive and
Yeah.
intentional
Yeah.
than be caught off
Off
guard.
guard, yeah.
I Google myself every couple of weeks.
No.
I do. Because I'm very intentional. I
Yeah.
want to know what's out there and what's
Yeah.
being posted,
Yeah.
right? And if there's ever anything that, thankfully so far, haven't,
Knock on wood.
but I mean, obviously, for people that are obviously much more established and much more, popular, what have you, you can actually set up, if you're in the news a lot, then you can actually set up Google alerts for yourself. And every time you are mentioned somewhere, you get an alert.
Okay.
And that way you can go and check and say, is this kosher? Is this good? Has
Yeah.
it been approved? Or someone's, posting
Yeah.
something about me. And then on social media, make sure that you set those privacy filters where people are, if they're tagging you, then you're approving the tag. So at least you know what you're being associated with,
Right,
or,
yeah.
tagged on.
Right.
There's lots of different ways of managing, content. There's actually tools. There's something called Hootsuite that you can use. Because again, if you are a prolific social media user,
Yeah.
then it gets daunting, because it's like, oh, I've got my Instagram page, I've got my Facebook, I've got my LinkedIn, I've got, TikTok, and I've
Yeah.
got all these YouTube, I've got all these different areas. It becomes then, how am I managing the content everywhere? But there are actually tools out there. So something like Hootsuite, you can go in there and schedule content for different
Oh.
media.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
link all your different accounts to this one account.
Yeah.
So that way you're not having to go and post on 5 different places.
Right.
You can put it on a calendar schedule and say, oh, October is breast cancer month. So, I want to have a post on breast cancer, and I want it to go out on October 2nd. You can actually sit down and plan your entire month, your entire year,
wow,
your
that's
quarter.
Advertisers apparently do that too,
Yeah.
like for stores. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
they'll put a certain date, and then that post will
Well,
post
yeah.
it on that
Yeah.
day, and then
Yeah.
it'll be linked into different, like
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
and Facebook.
Yeah, and
LinkedIn.
different accounts. So that way you're not having. So I mean, yes, it's harder to maintain it, but you have smart tools. So work smarter.
Smart, yeah.
and use those tools.
Right.
I mean, obviously. That's just one tool that I'm familiar with. I'm sure there's gazillions of them.
Yeah.
I only limit to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then, Facebook is probably just for family and friends. I don't
Right.
post anything much on professional on Facebook. It's really LinkedIn, and I just,
Stay with that.
stay with that.
Yeah.
But there are people that have, at some point, I bought a URL to create a website
Yeah.
for myself, and I thought eventually in life, when later on when I'm doing consulting
Yeah.
or things like that, where I'm not working full time,
Yeah.
then it helps to have a website and be able to freelance and consult. And I bought the URL early on so that I wouldn't lose it.
Right.
Right now, it's just linked to my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But eventually, I'll probably have a website.
develop it. Yeah.
And I think that's another way. Again, it depends upon
Yeah.
who's your audience.
Yeah.
What is the message you're trying to get?
Yeah.
And it's usually for people that are either freelancing or consulting or what have you.
Right.
It's good to have a website, and then you can completely control the content and curate the
Yes.
content, and that's where your web presence, you control what is
Yeah.
my brand
Right.
and what do I stand for, and have links to different things that you're doing. And if you have podcasts and things like that, there's things that's going on that you can all link to your website.
Right.
But if you don't want to do that, then obviously you have different social media outlets. But I always encourage people, Google yourself, see what's out there, and make sure you manage it proactively. And if there's something out there that you don't want,
Yeah.
then get in touch with a consultant that does reputation management
And
helps you with it.
Oh wow, this is daunting, right? but good to know.
So you'll be Googling yourself
Right?
at the end of the day this morning. I was
See
like,
what-
who's been posting about me?
Exactly. We're going to take a quick break, and we shall be continuing this amazing conversation in a few minutes. Welcome to Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. We are in conversation with Mithali, and we're talking about personal branding. So what role does networking play in personal branding, and how can I improve my networking skills?
Great question. Networking obviously is the people you know, right? And who you have within your network, whether it's, again, personal or professional. Who are the friends you hang out with? Who are the people at work that you associate
Yeah.
with? It's not, and as we all know, it's not just what you know that drives your success. It's who you know, right?
True.
And then take it a step further. It's who knows what you know.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you are setting up yourself as a subject matter expert or someone that's, looked on to or has a good reputation, then it's not enough just that your friends know how good you are, right? You have to have people within the organization that are, leaders or in places of influence, whether it's within your organization or in other places or in the industry, that need to know that you're good and
Yeah.
what are you good at,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And that's where networking becomes important. There is an aspect of networking that's becomes, again, even more important is to be able to, one, when you're expanding your network, you're getting to know more people. You're expanding your knowledge in a
Yeah,
way, because
right.
every conversation with someone that's either like you or different,
Then,
has a
yes.
different background,
Yeah.
you're learning something, right? And they get to know about you, you get to know about them. How do you then leverage that network? Is that if you are in if you're an entrepreneur and want to grow your business, it ends up being your network.
Yeah.
Because those are the people, that's word of mouth, whether they're clients or friends,
Yeah.
but these are the people that are going to be out there recommending you, talking about you. So it becomes important.
Right.
And if you are working with a company, your network is also important because,
Right.
again, these are the people that are going to vouch for you. These are the people that are going to help you differentiate yourself from other candidates every
Right.
time you're interviewing.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do is, we tend to focus on networking when people are in transition, when they're out of a job or they're looking for a new
Yeah.
job. But one thing that one of my mentors and one of my former bosses taught me is that networking is like a bank account, right? You have to keep making deposits
Yeah.
in it
Yeah.
so that when it comes time
Yeah.
for making a withdrawal, you don't go into an overdraft situation.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people start desperately networking or
Yeah.
reaching out to people
Yeah.
when they're looking for a job
yeah.
or, they suddenly won this promotion and then they're
Yeah.
reaching out to people. But that's really not the time
Yeah.
for you to try and build new relationships, because how often are you going to find someone that's going to be willing to recommend you if they haven't heard from you in 6 to 8 months and suddenly now you're like,
Yeah.
Lala, can you talk about
Yeah.
this or that
Right.
or what have you? And you're like, wow, I don't even know what you've been doing
Yeah.
for the past 6 months or
Right.
what have you. So it's an ongoing process. The other piece of it is, making that deposits.
Yeah.
What I learned from him is that, and he's an executive coach that set up Jim Wiederhold, and I learned so much of networking from him when I was doing executive coaching and working with him for a few years in part of my career, and I realized like he had built his business based on his network. That was his worth.
Yeah.
His net worth.
Yeah. Was his network. Wow. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And because he did executive coaching, he
Yeah.
did transition coaching,
Yeah.
he helped people find jobs.
Right.
And you can't do that if you don't have a wide
Yes.
network
Right.
and people trust you and you
Yeah.
have the reputation of working with quality candidates.
Right.
Right. So that brings me to the other aspect of, one, making those deposits, like he said. What are you consistently doing to add value to your network? It's not about what's in it for me. What are you going to do for me? Before you get to the point of asking someone for a favor,
Yeah,
you have to have made investments. So
Right.
what have you done for that person?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very simple as, when you're starting off early on in your career, volunteer for projects and, do things outside the scope of what you do. Go outside and volunteer for different nonprofits and things like that, where you're bringing value to different individuals and adding value and creating that network for yourself.
Right.
Sometimes it's, another way of developing relations is, say you connect with someone, okay, and then you connect with another person, and these two people don't know each other,
Yeah.
but you realize that they have something in common. Make that introduction,
Right. Yeah.
And what happens is, as their relationship develops, guess what? You get brownie points for it because they'll always remember, oh, Vitali connected
Yeah.
us, you know?
Yeah.
And as their relationship progresses, they'll always remember you for that, right?
Yeah.
And those are simple strategies,
Right.
simple things that you can do in, creating that network. Obviously, time is of essence. Not everyone has a lot of time to be able to go to in-person networking events and things like that. But being a part of different professional organizations and finding ways of, giving back to the community,
Right.
doing community events, or all of this adds
Adds
to,
up.
your network, because
Right.
every time you're out there doing something, you're meeting new people
Yeah.
and you're getting to expand your network.
Yeah.
The other part is managing your references, right?
Okay.
Because that is part of your network too. Now, it's customary anytime you're applying for a job, people will always say,
Yeah,
give us
give
some
me
references that we can talk to you because
Yeah.
we want to have an idea
Yeah.
about you or what have you. So it's very important to, a lot of times we just, apply for jobs but never let the person know that I'm using you as a reference.
Yeah, right.
You have to take it a step further and make sure, one, you want to have a wide enough network so that you can use different references at different times instead of using the same set of people,
Yeah.
right? Because different people have different experiences, and when you're looking at different jobs or positions, Or maybe you want to serve on a board and
Yeah.
they're looking for a reference. You may not want to give your boss as a reference for serving on a board.
Yeah.
You want to find another not-for-profit that maybe you volunteered, right?
Right.
So to have a portfolio of good references, you have to have a good network, right?
Right.
And you have to have a network where people will be willing to put in a good word for you,
yes,
right?
yes.
And that's not just the reputation that you have, but your personal relationship. Like
yes.
tomorrow, if I were to come to you and say, Lala, can you put in a good word for
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
You know, I mean, you're going to reflect upon our relationship
Yes.
and say, do I feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
How much do I know Matali? How well do I know Matali? Am I going to put my name on the line for Matali? Because
Yeah.
that's the other aspect.
Yeah.
You know, I teach, I mentor a lot of early careerists, and I get at least, 10, if not more, reference requests, every time it's time
Yeah.
for, jobs or fellowships or anything. But I don't necessarily give reference letters to everyone because
Yeah.
if I don't know you, I'm not going to be comfortable doing
Yeah,
that.
right.
Because my reputation is at stake. If I know you, I will go all out.
Yeah,
Right?
yes.
And make that phone call, not just write a letter. Make
Yeah.
the phone call, introduce
Yeah.
you to people, put my stamp of approval
Yeah.
on you and help you because that's what people have done for me. So
Yeah.
I believe in paying
Yeah.
it forward. But if I don't know you, then I'm taking a chance and putting my reputation on the line because then say you get the job and you underperform or you mess up.
Yeah.
Then now people are going to be like, oh, this was someone that Matali recommended. And guess what? Next time I recommend someone, they're like, no, we're not going to look at this person
Yeah.
because the last
Yeah.
time, we had a bad.
Yeah.
Same thing with a vendor. Maybe, you're looking for something and I'm like, oh, Lala, you should go,
Yeah.
get this from this particular store or this particular vendor or what have
Yeah.
you, right? And you go and you have a bad experience, you're like, I'm not going to ask Matali for a recommendation the next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just human
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah.
So I think managing your network, that's also very, very important, is not just people that you pick to recommend you,
Yeah.
but also people that you're putting your stamp
Yeah.
of approval on and you're recommending as you advance in your career.
Yeah.
That becomes important too because you want them, they become a reflection of you and an extension of you. And
Right.
it makes me so proud if someone that I mentored or someone that I helped in their career and they advance. I mean, it actually makes you,
Yeah.
proud and it adds to your accomplishments
Right.
when you see other people grow and
Yeah.
develop.
Yeah.
But if it can also backfire, and so you have to be careful. About
Yeah, you have to watch, right? What are common mistakes people make when they're developing their personal brand?
I think we talked about, a lot of the things. Be careful about what you're posting. Be careful about who's tagging you,
Yeah.
what you're associated with. Even simple things like on your LinkedIn, they'll ask you what social causes, are you are you passionate about or what have you. Politics has been very, very divisive,
Yes,
sadly,
yes.
in this country.
Yeah.
It used to not be this way, but it is. And so a lot of times that is one topic and one area that even though I personally feel strongly about,
Yeah, you
I
have
don't
to
really,
hold it back.
I don't really express my opinions on my professional
Yeah,
profile.
right.
Because we are in a state that is, very divided. Like Houston population may be a little different.
Yeah,
but the
but
rest of
like-
Texas is
Yeah.
again very different. And again, there's no right or wrong. We
yeah.
all have our personal opinions, our political
Yes,
opinions.
absolutely.
But when something is divisive and it could negatively impact
Right, yeah.
your relationships with people when it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Because which side of the aisle I align with has
Yeah.
nothing to do with what I do at work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And unless I'm in a place of authority where I'm making policy decisions
Yes.
for my company,
Yeah.
I don't need to mess with it.
Yeah.
And I don't need to advertise what my opinions
Yeah.
are about it.
Yeah.
Because I realize that it may actually hurt me more than it benefits me.
True.
And so I find avenues to support
Yeah.
things that I'm passionate about,
Right.
but it may not be out there in public view for me to be actually talking about things.
Good point.
If there's something that I'm really passionate about, yes, I'll come out and say it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's kind of guarded. So I
Right.
think it's important to recognize some of those things. And we already talked about, set up a Google alert, kind of look at what people are posting and saying about you. Let's talk about reputation management. So, sometimes things happen which you get associated with, and say, for instance, you're a CEO of a hospital and a patient dies in the hospital because of, a hospital acquired infection or an error or something like that. You were not directly responsible for it, but you are,
Yeah.
because you are
Yeah.
the CEO of the hospital.
Yeah.
So now the hospital gets tons of bad press,
Yeah.
your name gets associated with it. Maybe the board asks you to resign
Yeah.
because they're like, how did this happen on your watch? And maybe
Yeah.
that's what you end up
Yeah.
doing. Now that's going to follow you for the rest of your career,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we've actually, when I was doing executive coaching with this firm that I
Yeah.
worked with, we actually worked with a lot of leaders
Yeah.
that just got caught up
Yeah.
in something, and it was bad press,
Yeah.
and it could derail their entire
Yeah,
careers.
yeah.
And that's why you have something called reputation management. So now you can't change what happened.
Right.
You can't do away.
Yeah.
But how do you manage that moving forward?
Yes.
And then, there's search engine optimization, right? There's SEOs and things where you add more keywords and things like that, different things. So there's actually professionals that can help you write positive blogs, write, different things to kind of counter all the negative press.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And you start then trying to work harder on creating this positive persona and have more positive, try and get some positive press, even if you can't get positive press, but do, blogs or do articles or do things that are positive,
Yeah.
which get more hits.
Right.
So that by the time, people come down to the bad press, it's maybe on the second page of your Google
Yeah.
search page or what have you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's actually, people that will help you do that
Right.
to help you, come back
Mm-hmm.
from something like that. And so again, some things you can control. You know consciously what you're doing, you just don't care, or you don't think that it's going to be caught.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's caught and it's viral, and you're completely responsible for, that. So
Yeah.
that's why you always think twice before you post anything, even when sending out emails,
Yeah.
because emails get forward too.
Yeah,
You say
right.
something in an email,
And- yeah.
and that's why they say always sit on something. If you're upset, never email
Yeah.
back,
Right.
Type it, put it in your saved
Yeah.
draft, and then come back to it the next day and say, do I still want to send this?
it, yeah.
Yes, then go ahead, send it. But, once again, a mentor told me, anytime you're emailing someone, think about it as an ad on, a newspaper or a posting, right?
True.
Because
Yeah.
anyone can forward it to anyone.
yeah,
And your
and-
name gets associated with it.
Yeah.
So I think these are things that, we don't really think about. These could be mistakes, but
Yeah.
always being intentional, proactive, thoughtful
Yeah.
about what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're coming across, your body language,
Yeah.
all of that is part of your personal brand,
Wow,
right? Like
yeah.
online, offline,
Line,
everything.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So how do I measure the effectiveness of my personal branding efforts?
That's always, that's always challenging to know. Are you doing a good job or are you not? I guess part of it is just being able to look at, I guess, one of the measures would be, do you have followers?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And most influencers, you get to see if someone has a lot of followers, then you're doing something or saying something that people are, enjoying or learning from or what have you. So, yeah. So I think that's a good measure to say, okay, my messaging is actually reaching an audience and
Yeah.
people are, appreciating it. That's one way. The other measure is your network, right? Because how well connected are you, and how meaningful are those relationships? Like I could know 10,000 people, but is it possible for me to actually have a meaningful connection with each of those 10,000 people?
Right.
Probably not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Unless I was like, the super networker or what have you, or had people that were managing that for
Yeah.
me. So it's really not the quantity of relationships, but the quality
Yes,
of
of
those
the
relationships.
Yeah.
That if I were to pick up the phone and call someone tomorrow to ask for something, are they actually going to be there for me and help me and, be willing to do whatever I'm asking them to do? Or are they not even going to take my phone call, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's the point of having a
Yeah.
wide network
Yeah.
if when you need something, they don't come through for you?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And so that's where, again, that investing goes in. Get to know people, make personal connections, get to
Yeah.
know them.
Yeah.
Not just work with them and know them professionally, but what are their likes? What are their dislikes? What are some things that you have in common with them that you can continue to cultivate and grow so that relationship, and you have to nurture the relationship. It's like
Yeah.
a plant, right?
Yeah.
You want it to grow and thrive.
Yeah.
It needs nutrition. It needs water. It needs,
Yeah.
constant nurturing. And that's what you do with the relationships is you have to be able to and so that's another measure is, the quality of the relationships. Of course, the quantity, helps, but it's really more the quality of the relationships that you have. And then, what is your online reputation out there? Like, if other people are writing about you or posting about you, then what is it? And is it positive or negative? Those are, again, measures of being able. And I guess the other measure is just how successful you are in your personal life or in your career. And if you've done a good job of managing your reputation and managing your personal brand, you should know.
Right.
You'll
Yeah,
know
you come-
it
yes.
because you'll see
Yeah.
that people are talking about you,
Right.
good or
Yeah,
bad or
yeah.
what have you.
Absolutely.
So some measures are quantitative,
Yeah.
and others are qualitative.
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
It's like, what are people saying about me when
Yeah.
I'm not in the room?
Right.
And that's a measure.
That's absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You may not be able to actually express that.
Yeah, but it's still-
you know
yeah.
that's there.
Right, absolutely. This has been such an enlightening conversation. Like, I could go on, but unfortunately, it's already time for us to go. So we thank you so much, Mitali, for this amazing topic and something completely different, but something that you can actually sit and and you can sit and reflect on and work on it.
Yeah.
So I love it. Thank you so much for your time. Do you want to give us any last tidbit of information?
I would just encourage everyone to just think about what is it that you stand for.
Yeah.
And someone actually, when they were helping me craft my value statement, asked me a question, what is your mission in life, or what is your purpose in life? And it took me a lot to think about it. And you want it to be simple enough, but at the same time, you want it to really reflect who you are or what you are.
Right.
So there's two things that I came up with. One was, the mission or purpose was to make a difference and impact as many lives as I can. Okay? And I do that through my work in healthcare, through teaching, through coaching, to mentoring, all of these are, or volunteering, working on different nonprofit boards. These are all ways to be able to make an impact and make a difference and leave a legacy. The other exercise I went through was defining my own personal values. And so I came up, I'm big about acronyms, so I came up with the acronym RISK, because I am actually a risk taker, but risk with a Q. So it's R for respect, I for integrity, S for service, and Q for quality.
Wow.
So that's how I live my life, with these four.
Wow, love it. Wow, love it.
At work, at home, I mean, that's what I stand for. And it's a pretty
That again, respect,
integrity, service, and quality. So risk with a Q, not with a K. But I love a play of words, and I'm all about acronyms. And I said, I am a risk taker in life, so I like the acronym RISK, but it's with it.
That's amazing. You've given us so much to think about and work on. We love having you on the show, Mithali. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate you all and what you do and the difference y'all are making through this show. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for staying on the show, and we will see you next time, same place, same time. Bye-bye.